welcome you all watching In Your Interest here on News9. I'm Krishna Kumar and tonight we're putting the focus on Iran. Viewers, history has a dangerous habit of repeating itself. First, it was Sri Lanka, an economic collapse so severe that protesters stormed the president's palace. Then came Bangladesh, where currency pressure and inflation fears triggered public anger across the streets. And Nepal followed with political instability driven by economic uncertainty and public distrust. Different countries, different systems, but one common trigger: economic distress that slowly turned into political unrest. Tonight, our focus shifts to a country far more volatile and far more consequential: Iran. The question we're asking is simple yet unsettling. Is Iran now walking the same dangerous path? Tonight, Iran is not calm. Iran is not stable. Iran is boiling. From Tehran's iconic Grand Bazaar to streets across major cities, protests have erupted with fury. Security forces are firing tear gas and demonstrators are running for cover. Human rights groups claim that at least 35 people have been killed and more than 1,200 have been arrested. This is not an isolated protest. This is ground zero of economic rage, a nation where daily survival has become a struggle and patience has snapped. So what pushed Iran to this breaking point? The answer lies squarely in the economy. The Iranian Rial, its currency, crashed to a record low against the US dollar. Inflation is no longer a statistic, it is a lived reality. Salaries are shrinking, savings have been wiped out, and purchasing power has collapsed completely. Add to this years of sanctions, economic mismanagement, and internal isolation. The result is an economy where even basic necessities have become luxuries for ordinary citizens. Iran's leadership says the situation is under control, but the president himself admits that the pain is real. MasoudPezeshkian, the president, says people's livelihoods are his daily concern and has acknowledged failures within the system. He has promised monetary and banking reforms, protection of purchasing power, and direct delivery of government subsidies, while offering dialogue with protesters over what he calls legitimate demands. But tonight, those assurances are being tested on the streets. For many Iranians, reform promises mean very little when prices rise faster than incomes, and the pressure on Tehran is now coming from both the streets and abroad. On the streets, Iranians are no longer negotiating. They want immediate relief from soaring prices and control over essential commodities. They are demanding a stable currency to stop the Rial's collapse and protect their savings. Workers want livable wages that match inflation, while families want guaranteed access to basic essentials. Protesters are calling out economic mismanagement, corruption, and profiteering. They want jobs protected, small businesses saved, and reforms delivered with timelines, not just promises. Above all, they are demanding dignity, fair treatment, and an end to heavy-handed crackdowns. The world is watching the developments in Iran very closely. Western capitals are raising concerns over human rights violations and the use of force against protesters. Many have warned that instability in Iran will not remain confined within its borders and could impact the entire region. US President Donald Trump has issued strong remarks stating that the US is closely monitoring the situation and will not rule out intervention if regional stability is threatened. Now, these comments add another layer of pressure on an already isolated Iranian regime. And so tonight, the big questions confronting the Iranian leadership are unavoidable. Is Iran sitting on a ticking time bomb? Will economic collapse eventually translate into political upheaval, just as it did in Sri Lanka? Is the regime underestimating public anger the way governments did in Bangladesh and Nepal? And can promises of reform calm down a population that has already poured onto the streets? Or is Iran now heading towards a point of no return? That is the debate tonight. Is Iran next? And joining us are Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian diplomat, Pathikrit Pain, foreign affairs expert, Dr. Zakir Hussain, Middle East expert. Thank you all of you for taking time out to be with us. I'm going to begin with you, Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. The situation in Iran, the visuals that we are seeing are, giving eerily familiar feeling, isn't it?
Well, it's a very eerie feeling that you get when you watch these visuals. And I get it particularly because I have served in Iran in the early 1990s. And many of the places which are shown on these visuals are remarkably familiar. So I have a feeling of anguish when I see so much of unhappiness on the streets. And I must say that Iranians are engaged now in the hugest and biggest nationwide protests that have been witnessed for decades. Now, while initially these protests were triggered by a severe economic collapse, the demonstrations have rapidly evolved into a broader political movement demanding the overthrow of the Islamic Republic. Let me say that from what I have read, protests have taken place in about 280 locations across Iran. Iran has, 31 provinces, and in 27 out of these, the protests have taken place. So you can understand the nationwide nature.
But would you say situation in Iran is similar to the ones witnessed in Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh?
I think it is more serious because Iran is, first of all, a much bigger country and of more consequence. And moreover, the region in which it is situated is extremely volatile and sensitive, with the happenings in Syria, Iraq, and, well, across in the Middle East, areas of Palestine. The potential for troubles in Iran to escalate and for foreign intervention are very, very acute. The US has already said that it will not hesitate to take, some more coercive action, more decisive action, if the suppression of peaceful protesters, and he calls them peaceful protesters, Donald Trump, if this doesn't stop. But nonetheless, let me state that there have been calls of death to Khamenei, death to the dictator, and things don't look good at all in Iran at the moment.
Okay, things don't look good at all. Pathikrit Pain, as we speak about Iran, we are showing those visuals of what happened in Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh as well. Economic distress. People can withstand a lot of things. We've seen that in the course of history. But clearly, one thing that really is the last straw on the camel's back, as it were, is economic distress, and that is what is what is playing out in Iran. Not the first time we've seen protests in Iran, but this could yet turn out to be definitive.
Well, at least in case of Bangladesh, there was no economic distress. A lot of what happened in Bangladesh was orchestrated because the organization, the party which spearheaded the entire protest, is expected to be wiped out in the forthcoming election in Bangladesh. That is the NCP, the National Citizens Party. Secondly, if you look at what happens in Iraq, look, a lot of what is happening has to do with the economic sanctions. And it is as clear as this, that if you do not allow American companies or Western companies to operate in your country, you would be considered as a pariah, you would be considered a lot of things, and you will be considered as an adversary, and there will be sanctions. So there has been sanctions on Iran for 45 years, as recent as the CAATSA, the Countering American Adversaries to Sanctions Act, and a series of other sanctions, which have literally crippled that economy because you, in spite of having one of the largest reserves of oil, cannot simply trade it. And because dollar is the reserve and the trading currency of the world, it is easy for the Americans to impose sanctions. It's a little laughable when America shows concern for the protesters of Iran because we know what generally they do in many of the countries. But the reality is this, is sanction the only reason why Iran is in such a difficult situation? I guess not. Because one of the key reasons for Iran's problem is because Iran has overstressed itself. Iran for a long period of time had taken their own people for granted. They were heavily investing into Hamas, Hezbollah, and Houthis. Their concern were not for the people of the country itself. That's one part. Secondly, you might say that Americans can be responsible for this or that, but certainly the Americans are not responsible for the way the Iranians treat their own women. So there are a combination of various factors. Third, there's a huge level of inequality. The average, lifestyle, cost of living, standard of living in Iran is very different from what you get if you're part of the clergy, if you're part of the regime. So there's a difference. Now, ideology, nationalism, all these things are fine, but so long as the stomachs are filled with food. Now, that is where a problem is emerging, because the alternate structure which Iran thought would work in terms of China investing $400–500 billion, trading in yuan, that has not happened. Last but not the least, Iran has created far too many number of enemies. They have a problem with the West. They have a ideological hatred. They want to destroy Israel. That's another part. And at the same time, they have terribly bad relation with the Arab Sunni world. They have completely difficult relation with the Saudis. So when you have too many enemies and you have overstretched yourself and you have taken your own people for granted, you have not talked about social reform, and you have completely mismanaged the economy, then invariably someday this would have imploded, and that is what is happening. Now, whether it leads to a regime change or not, we don't know, because if the Americans think that I can bomb and people will support it, that may not be the case.
Okay.
A lot of people might be against the regime, but maybe equally against the Americans in Iran. Likewise, what can also happen, my last point, to divert the attention, it may also happen that the Iranians start bombing somebody else, because they also think there's a perception that a lot of what is happening inside Iran is being orchestrated from outside. So it's a subterfuge of various layers, but invariably, I think for far too long, people of Iran were taken for granted, because you have huge inflation. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to sustain your family. That is where the problem is happening, and protests are happening, which are taking a dangerous turn. Back to you.
Right. I'll just get back to you, Pathikrit, as well. Thank you for putting that into perspective. Dr. Zakir Hussain, the situation in the Middle East or West Asia per se is volatile. Iran is the most volatile. Iran itself is in a very problematic space within West Asia, and this is certainly not good for regional stability.
Region is already unstable.
Yeah.
Iran is not responsible. Why Saudi Arabia and UAE are fighting? Why Syria is suffering? Why Israel is planning for doing its agenda of Greater Israel? Why Iraq is suffering? Why Egypt is collapsing economically? Iran is not the reason of such problem, because Iran is seen as the last bastion where America does not have any foothold. And Iran is suffering since 1979, and it has developed its military capabilities. That's why neither America is daring to repeat the attack after 12 days war, nor Israel. If they are going to indulge in such type of things, Iran will match them even more than that, not only militarily, but economically, stopping oil from Hormuz 21%, causing $200 billion losses to the world and destabilizing the region. And other thing that I accept, and everybody accept, there is a problem in the system of Iran. Corruption is very rampant, and you have given a very balanced account of the things. So what I feel that the current problem is both instigated by America and Israel, and second, their own internal domestic problems, which the regime has not been able to solve out because of main three reasons. Continuing sanctions. Second, sanction from the European Unions. Third, the low oil prices by Russia, which has countered the market of Iran, as well as Chinese $400 billion has not been able to do what it has promised. So what I feel that at present, America can shout, Israel can make all the elements, but if they are going to attack Iran, they may create some more economic crisis, but there will be a severe and heavy counter attack on the precious point of America, that is Israel. We have seen what happened in 12 days war, and how Iran demonstrated its missile capabilities and hitting capabilities. On the other hand, we also find that after that attack, China and Russia has become serious to support Iran because they found that Iran has capability to match Israel, and if Iran goes, then the footholds of these two countries will be nowhere in the Middle East. And other, I also feel if Iran falls, then trimmer will go to Islamabad and Riyadh also. So I also feel that tacitly Saudi Arabia and Pakistan are also supporting the regime to stay in power. So the dynamics in the region is not alone Iran, but the entire politics which has been boiling this region for the last 2-3 decades.
Ambassador Prabhu, Iran is at a point of culmination of so many things that's been building up for so long. You know, the economic collapse has also been triggered by how it has been drained by the sanctions, be it the US sanctions or the European sanctions. And clearly, you know, that is a power move to cripple Iran further, to weaken the regime further.
Well, first of all, let me say that I agree with Dr. Zakir Hussain when he pointed out how important Iran is to this region, to the Middle East region, and how developments there impact other countries. But I'd like to come back to the situation which we were discussing, and that is the internal situation as a result of these protests. You know, financial and cost of living protests in Iran have transformed into an explicit anti-regime demonstration. And this is because of the long simmering and deepening economic crisis. Now, let me tell you that when I was posted in Iran in the early 1990s, a dollar was 3,000 Rials. Now it is 1.47 million Rials. So you can see how it has plummeted downwards and continues to do so. So this has caused serious problems for the people of Iran. You know, the inflation is about 42%. Food prices have risen by about 72% last year as compared to the previous year. There is a complete erosion of public purchasing power and savings. And as another panelist was saying, it has become very difficult for people to, you know, sustain their families, to support their families, look after them. So there is a feeling amongst the Iranian middle class that they are decimated. And this has naturally brought them out on the streets. These protests started off in the Grand Bazaar of Iran, which is really comprising all kinds of items, and it is you know, very, very important economic center point in Iran. But from there, it is now spread all over, and there doesn't seem to be any controlling it. Of course, Ayatollah Khamenei has said that these protesters should not be spared, and the Chief Justice has said that no mercy will be shown to the rioters. But the fact of the matter is that the riots are spiraling out of control, and there is no control on the you know, inflation aspect. The country is continuing to have high inflation, and for example, the price of cooking oil has tripled during the last week as compared to what it was. So how are people going to support themselves and their families? This is the fundamental question. And of course, the Iranian regime is responsible for working out a solution.
Pathikit Pine, we've not the first time that Iran has seen, you know, public outrage spilling onto the streets, and then a brutal crackdown happened during the hijab protests as well. But those protests were quelled brutally by the regime. Do you think they can do it again this time?
Well, it's too difficult to speculate, but there's a difference between an issue of hijab and where people are finding it difficult to make both ends meet. This has probably far more resonance than probably what you know, the hijab protest had. See, again, I reiterate, what is happening now is not, the reason for this is not yesterday or day before yesterday. You know, there are challenges even China faces from United States, Russia also faces from United States, even India faces. But these economies are far more resilient, far bigger economy, and they have been very calibrated in terms of their responses in areas. Unfortunately for Iran, I do agree Iran is very important for Middle East, but as I stated, they had invested in the Syrian war, they are involved in the Ukraine affairs, they have been into Yemen, so they have invested. It is ultimately where you put your money, especially when you have limited amount of money because of the challenges of sanctions. I want to make one statement. Look, Vietnam fought a 7-year-old or 7 or 8 years of war against the United States. Even today, Vietnam remains literally a communist country. But it has a functional relationship with the rest of the world to ensure that, look, I know what is good for me, and I still would ensure that investments do not get stopped. It doesn't mean that you only have to invite the American investors. It means that you need to be a far more pragmatic in your approach. The Saudis have recalibrated their policy towards United States. They are far less inclined to have the petrodollar arrangement as they used to have in the past. But what is important is that they have managed it properly. They have not been what you call adamant, and that's how they have been able to survive, and yet made America and others look into their interest as well. Unfortunately, somewhere Iran, for all the it's not easy for America to crush Iran. It is a big country with far bigger population, with big strategic depth. If the regime falls, there will be chaos. But I think the approach towards the economy should have been far better than what it has been.
Okay.
I don't think economy was the focus for decades. That should have been. Had that been the case, things would have not been as it is today.
And here we are today, Dr. Zakir Hussain. Iran is paying the price for not prioritizing economics and getting involved in far too many things that it's bitten off more than it can chew. The fact of the matter is that we are talking tonight for the people of Iran, not for the regime of Iran. Whichever the regime may be, the people need to get justice. And if Iran continues to be this unstable and a possible US intervention is what they're looking at, then that is making an Iraq out of Iran eventually.
My question is that if this government goes, Islamic government goes, what magic will come to improve the economy of Iran? Naturally, they will de-sanction Iran. The country is like faithful country, a very good friend of Iran, that is India. It has also stopped purchasing oil. And people forget that it is under sanctions since 1979. Iran has done very well. Its resistance economy. And of course, crisis is there. What I pointed that 3 reasons are more important to cite. Number 1, that is European sanction. Now, China's failure to do what it promised. Third, that Russian cheap oil. And Iran is supporting not very much to these resistance forces. It is said that 50 to 60 to $100 billion. It is nothing for Iran looking its oil reserves and its linkages. Are the friends of Iran are cooperating, or they are succumbing under the pressure of America? They are succumbing under the pressure of America. They are not supporting Iran. Iran has not done any attack to anyone since long, unlike other countries doing in the region. Why Israel has attacked Qatar? It is a very significant question. Iran has not done. So what we find that, of course, the problem of the common people
Iran
in
Iran
is
Dr. Zakir Hussain, the question on Iran is that it's tacit support to Hezbollah, it's tacit support to the Houthis in Yemen.
It is given because Iran is a problem for America, and Iran is supporting its asymmetric forces, while America is also doing the same thing. Every country is supporting asymmetric forces in this world at this juncture because they are fighting asymmetric warfare than direct warfare.
Okay.
So Iran is not doing anything exceptional. It is also involved there because Iran wants to hedge its national interest, and that's why the people of Iran is telling no Gaza or Lebanon, we are for Iran. So their demand is legitimate, and what I say that Iran has to introspect. Ayatollah Khamenei has to introspect in the system where corruption is very high, domestic economy is sagging, all inflation, everything is going down. They have to develop alternative economic at this time, and to some extent that Iran is in a catch-22 situation. I don't know how they are going to bail themselves out without compromising with America. It is a very tough situation for Iran, we all know. But the level of protest is not equal to the level of protest which was during Mahsa Amini, that the lady which was killed. So what I feel that crisis is there, situation is tough, but two things have benefited Iran. Number one,
Right.
Iran got information, the sleeper cell of Israel in their campuses. Second, in 12-day war, it de-embedded the Israeli agents or Mossad or supporter of Shah
Right.
from its society.
Right. Right.
So Iran is of course, we accept that Iran is at a crossroad.
Okay.
But the problem is also not in its hand. Let's see what happens.
Let's see what happens. We'll have to leave it at that. We're completely out of time here on that conversation. Dr. Zakir Hussain, Pathik Ritpain, and Ambassador Prabhu, thank you all of you for taking time out to be with us here on In Your Interest on News 9. And with that, it's a wrap here from my side. Thank you so much for watching. This is Krishna Kumar signing off.
इम्तियाज जी के फादर को बीमारी के कारण अचानक हॉस्पिटल में एडमिट होना पड़ा। पॉलिसी बाजार की टीम ने हॉस्पिटल पहुंचकर लाखों का क्लेम अप्रूव करवाने में पूरी हेल्प की। पॉलिसी बाजार पर 1 करोड़ का हेल्थ इंश्योरेंस सिर्फ 550 रुपए महीने से शुरू।
पढ़ता है, खेलता है, झूलता उछलता है, दौड़ता कभी कभी दौड़ कराता है, आगे आगे बढ़ता है इंडिया, अमूल दूध पीता है इंडिया।
(2026) Take notes. Manifesting. For my little Miss Sunshine, tickles and giggles. Also wanna be a biker chick this time. And dear 2026, only love for my people and myself. To manifest my best life, nature's cosmic energy.
Now mine, natural diamond intention pendants.
When drinking water turns deadly, it demands answers.
What is really going on there?
News9 brings you
Imagine water that you drink.
contaminated drinking water in Indore, revealing a disturbing link to at least 15 reported deaths.
Typhoid outbreak in tribal areas. 104 patients.
After 15 people were killed.
Foul, frothy water from taps.
You would assume it's safe. It turned deadly.
How is that happening?
Different cities. One national crisis. Bharat. Quest for clean water. News 9. In your interest.
This isn't a trail of peace. This is pressure overload. A hill built for 1,000